In this episode, Christian explains how he built not just a longhouse, but a sense of community, identity, and purpose for the Haida people. He shares emotional stories about his father, the guidance of his ancestors, and now he's passing these traditions to the next generation. If you enjoy listening to true Canadian story like this, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel today. And stick around to the end to enjoy Christians performing an indigenous song that has never been played before. Check it out.
Basically, my grandfather says, okay, you have half the bills now. When you die, you can't really take your money with you, so enjoy it while you're alive.
We're on the traditional and unceded territory of Haida Nation. This village was called 𝐂𝐢𝐬𝐿. And today we have Christian White on the channel with us. Hi Christian, how are you doing?
Great.
Pleasure to meet you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, my English name is Christian White. I was born on 𝐷𝐸𝐽𝐬. My Haida name is 𝐂𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐬, which means true voice. So I was born and raised here on 𝐷𝐸𝐽𝐬. I grew up in Old Masset. It's in the northern part of 𝐷𝐸𝐽𝐬. Very beautiful, looking over Masset Sound here. And throughout the year we have a lot of resources we depend on, such as the berries and the different types of salmon. The late 60s or so, I remember the first totem pole being raised right near my house where I grew up, and it was carved by Robert Davidson and his brother Reg. I think that signaled the rebirth of our arts and culture. So I got to see Haida singing and dancing, and my father participated with that, and he started to carve in argillite, then copper, and then silver, and then gold. And as he moved through those materials, myself and my brothers, we picked up his old tools, and he would let us
play around.
Yeah, with carving argillite and copper.
Okay.
And also I helped him work on his pieces.
Was art part of the Haida culture?
Of course, it goes back generations. Our great-great-grandfather, Charles 𝐖𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐻, he was a master artist, and his work's in many museums around the world. Him and his wife, Isabel, they created spruce root hats and beautiful paintings that Charles did.
Okay.
And also he specialized in argillite carving, which is a stone found here on 𝐷𝐸𝐽𝐬.
It's all mostly black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
Yeah. So there was very little of our cultural heritage left here. And like I said, back in 1969, that signaled a revival. And so the songs and the dances were being revived, the mask carving. We didn't have much really till there was maybe one or so wood carver in the village. Reg Davidson, he continued working on masks. But most of them, of course, they were being sold for to make a livelihood. And that's what I did with myself too, as I carved argillite. It was my livelihood as an artisan.
Right.
And my father also as well, selling his jewelry to people that would move to our town, and it became amongst our own people too. It became a statement to wear a silver bracelet with your crest on.
Right.
Because back in the day when the missionaries came, they basically outlawed our traditional form of wearing the crest, which would be the tattoos. We used to have tattoos, would have the crest on.
And would that be part of the Potlatch band?
After the missionaries came here, then it became like a folk art, kept at a low level, low standard. We actually call those the Dark Ages. Leading up to the house building, sometimes young men would be, and women, they would be tattooed. So they'd be youth really, when they get their first tattoos and piercings. And so that would show their status in the community.
Right.
And when the missionaries came, that became basically frowned upon.
Because they want to take away.
And so it was, but it was acceptable to wear a bracelet with a design on it. And when the revival was happening in the 70s, and then it became more acceptable and more people were proud of it, and they would be really they would have their bracelets going up their
around.
arms, rings, medallions and earrings. And
Yeah.
each family lineage has a different line of crest. Some are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So on the raven side, you have the grizzly bear, the killer whale, the shark, and then on the eagle side, you have the eagle, you have the beaver, frog. Each family has a different set.
Right. And those would be the two big clans.
Yeah, the two different moieties. Yes, that would be designed by members of their family,
Mm-hmm.
and then so they would be able to wear their crest proudly on a robe, and often they're given a traditional name at that time,
Right.
and sometimes a beautiful woven headband.
So how has that revival history or experience during your upbringing influence you nowadays?
In a really long, slow climb, reinstating our title for Haida 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐬, we have more and more younger artists, both male and female, that have really taken the art form steps forward. And I'm glad I was a part of it, really.
Share a little bit more about how do you recruit the young generation to become your apprentices, and what is your role when you lead them?
They were related to me in some way or the other. One of them was my son, and then the other ones were his cousins.
Yeah.
And so it was very similar to how it's done traditionally. The young men would migrate from their village at the age 12. They would migrate from their village to their uncle's village. And so they would leave their mothers, they would leave their fathers, and they would go to their uncle's village.
And this is like a custom from a matriarchal society.
Yeah. And in return, they would get the chief and his brothers, that other village, the first village we talked about, with their sons are going out, they would get nephews back. Well, so they wouldn't be doted on by their mothers for too long, and they wouldn't be babied by their fathers too long, really. So it was our uncle's responsibility to raise them to be confident and strong, knowledgeable in many different ways, such as house building, canoe building. But in the case of a girl, usually she would stay in her father's village with her mother, and her mother would be the one who guided her to become, food preparer, or a weaver, and to be historians, really, too.
Right.
Historians, knowledge keepers, and and they would hold the names too, also the names that would be passed down through the generations. And
so, for example, what kind of names would be passed down?
there's each family would have a list of names. They could be 50 names or 100 names.
Can you give us one example?
My grandfather, back in 1935, when he became acknowledged as being a chief.
Wow.
And this was during the Potlatch ban and stuff. His anglicized name was George 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐬. My grandfather, he had the names 𝐂𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐿𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐻. And so they carried those names throughout their lives. Some of them they might have gotten earlier on throughout their life. They could bestow those names upon somebody else.
And that's the name will be passed on to the next generation.
Yeah.
To carry the legacy. I think you kind of mentioned the hardship of building this house, or what sort of challenges you faced while you're trying to reestablish this historical significance.
I applied for the timbers for this in 1995.
Okay.
And that was right after I carved a totem pole for my father for his potlatch. And he hadn't really told me about the process. He went through to get several logs to carve the canoes. And so I had to go through the process. I had to find my way through the process. So I wrote letters to Macmillan Blodell, the Ministry of Forests, to Old Masset Village Council, and to Council of Haida Nation for support for my project. I did my own drawings. My father, he often told me about how they had designed things. They had designed houses, they had designed boats. And so I said, well, I could do it. And so, I just looked at old photographs of Haida houses that were taken, 100 or so years ago. And so I just calculated it, really. So I had to figure it out right from scratch, really. And I wanted to do it on my own, really. I didn't want to hire an architect. I didn't want to do a feasibility study because I had seen, even in my short period of time with other things happening in our community, where feasibility study, just money getting poured into that.
But nothing actually.
And nothing actually ever happening. I just decided to go on my own.
What motivated you to even wanting to create a house? Or is this a long house?
Well, I was inspired. My father inspired me really. After I started making my own livelihood, which was at a very young age, I started bringing in my own income by about 15 years of age.
What were you doing back then? 15?
I was carving on many different types of materials. I was carving on whale teeth, like sperm whale teeth. I was carving on silver coins and just all the 𝐅𝐢𝐧𝐝𝐢𝐥𝐿. At first I was selling my medallions for like $25, and then the next year I was selling for $35, and then $45. And then I was doing like 5 of these in one night. And then, so I'd be able to make, I'd sell them to the tourists and to local or people that had come in with the Department of National Defense.
Wow.
And to teachers, and hop on a plane and fly to Prince Rupert. I wouldn't tell my parents or nothing else. And so,
luckily there was no cell phone back then. They won't be able to call you.
So I was really ambitious. And because I like to have money in my pocket, and I would also give back to my parents really through my mother. I would give her money every month really. Even though I wasn't even living with my parents anymore by then, I was living with my grandfather, and he was like my uncle. Like I said, when a young man becomes a teenager, and they would be raised by someone other than his parents, and so I stayed with my grandfather, and once my parents moved out to their new house, then basically my grandfather says, "Okay, you have half the bills now." And,
reality kicks in.
So even after that, I was still able to contribute to my mother and father and my siblings to help them. Because we weren't brought up very wealthy at all. After I raised a pole for my father, we had a huge potlatch and celebration. But it was always in his mind to build a house like this. And so that's why I applied right away after we did his totem pole. So I had to go through a process. It took 2 years to be approved.
Can you walk us through a little bit about how that process will look like within those 2 years?
Like I said, I contacted the Ministry of Forests. I said I need 16 cedar trees to build this traditional Haida house, and after 2 years I was approved. After I'd almost given up on it really, and then they had called me and said, "Oh, you've been approved." So I arranged for a meeting with the liaison with the Ministry of Forests.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, this is where I want to go."
Yeah.
Because this is where my father told me to go look. But he had just passed away a few months before that, about 6 months. But I remember him telling me where to go, so I went there, and then I looked through the forest. But when we're driving along, the liaison, he's pointing to all these trees that were basically dead standing trees. And they were garbage trees, really. And they said, "Oh yeah, maybe those would be good." And I talked with the forest company, also McMillan Bodell, and they provided me with a couple of fallers. And then what I did was I contacted the highway logging trucks, basically. The other option was to get them delivered to the sort, because they have these heavy-duty logging trucks, and they could deliver them to the sort. But I would need to take them from there to here.
Right.
So I thought it would be better to just load them up once onto a truck and come here directly. And so that was a good call that I made. It costs more money, of course, but probably 4 times as much nowadays, but at that time it was reasonable. And so within a week I had all these logs here. I had a dream that night that I was in the kitchen, my parents' kitchen there, and looking out the window. My father was looking over my shoulder, and it was just a proud feeling that we had starting. A friend of mine contacted me and said, "There's an opportunity. locally. We're looking for somebody to train some out-of-work people, to give them something to do for the winter and spring. And so I said, well, I got a project. And so what I did was, well, basically I taught them what my father had taught me, which was to use a mill, like a hand mill, to mill all these beams to shape. So I had to teach them how to sharpen the chainsaws and to adjust the heights on the guides and to set up the cut really too. And each of these beams took about a week or more to process them. And because they're so heavy, you got to jack them up to roll them over. So so over the next 4 months, that's all we did was we through the winter, and we worked on that, getting them all shaped out, and so it was. But then after that, I came to the summertime, and I basically said, now what? We kept it going for a little while, and then that's when I said, well, I'll teach the young people to carve. I started to apply for different places for arts funding. Right. The 𝐂𝐲 Trust was an arts program. They had an arts program. Of course, the 𝐂𝐲 Trust was the 𝐂𝐲 Trust account, and then it was developed into the society, and they started off with something like 20 million or so. When South Moresby Forestry Replacement Account. It was to basically help out with federal funding that was assisting the Haida as well as the logging companies so that they can stop the logging in Haida. The logging companies considered it their birthright, I guess, to log these islands. Right. From sourcing the log to carrying the log to here and then having people to build the house, everything costs money. Where did you get the funding from? I would get maybe between $10,000 and $15,000 a year to train them for maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. Right. And so my first 4 apprentices I had for 4 years. My brothers and I, other relatives, we made a society. We made our own nonprofit society. And my uncle, 𝐂𝐲𝐬𝐬𝐿 Willis White, came, and so he said, 𝐂𝐲𝐻𝐷𝐷𝐻𝐷 People's House, rather than 𝐂𝐲 House People. So it's very similar to our ancestors, the branch of our ancestors. I was applying for other lands too to put the building up on, and but then there was a change of local council, Old Masset Village Council, and then so I said, well, if they're not going to give me that plot for a lot of land there out at Newtown, I'll take this one. Well, it's right here. This is where Dad wanted it anyway, so so I just squeezed it in between my brother's houses here. I was looking for funding, and I seen a program from Western Economic Diversification, and so I found that I could get up to $150,000 grant towards my building, and so I was approved for it, but I had to find matching funding. And I had about $60,000 in savings, and then and so I got one of my friends to calculate the value of all the beams, and so it turned out all the beams and all the wood I had the added value of $90,000. So I had exactly $150,000 for the matching funding. It was early. Springtime of 2004, I had been approved for the grant, and then I designed the foundation of the building, and I got a structural engineer to look at it, and he said it was over 30% overbuilt, which is a good thing. And so I put the foundation in, and I was working, trimming up the beams, getting everything all ready. The money wasn't coming in yet. They're holding up all the money for I don't know why, they were just holding it back. It was been managed through our community futures, and so they held it back. And so I was using my own savings throughout that time for like a lot of the building, the foundation, almost right up to the time we raised the first beams into place. Like on the, we had everything ready, and I called the community to come and help. There was about 30 or more strong men that showed up, and 100 strong children, and many of the elders in the village came. And, so it was quite an exciting day. You know, the first day we had like the outside frame of the whole building standing there, and 2 weeks later I called in some machines to help out.
Put the beams on
yeah,
there.
to put the beams on top. And the first day we got only 2 on. The second day we got 4. It took a little bit of figuring out how to do it. So within a month we had all the beams. A lot of these we wrestled up by hand, these cross pieces.
Wow.
Yeah, we had actually go along these beams and then plane down any bumps on the top.
Yeah.
And because there was a few waves in there, we had to grind down, and it seemed like very high. And so,
It is very high.
well, so you know, I had my crew. They were all Haida local carpenters, and one of them didn't show up. I had to go. So I acted as you know, basically the general contractor. I had to take care of the all the materials coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and the way the funding came in very incrementally. It was, you know, every penny. I had to.
Basically in and out, in and out.
Yeah. It was very difficult, but I managed to do it. I pulled it off.
It sounds like the community is very supportive of this project, and it's also a dream of yours. How has your partner or your family felt when you're using up your own saving?
Well, my wife has, she often repeats what her mother had said to her. You can't take it with you. You know, I mean, when you die, you can't really take your money with you. So enjoy it while you're alive.
And she's like, Christian, just go for it.
You know, we never really were in need, really basic needs. We've been able to, you know, my house I grew up in, I still live there. I actually have the oldest house in the village. You know, so, you know, like I chose early on, you know, to think of my artwork as a career. When I first started carving, I would go visit other artists, really, and it was like a friendly competition. We would compare each other's works, and
I heard stories about the Haida tradition of raising longer totem poles just because a previous chief has a shorter totem pole, and he wanted to raise a higher totem pole because just does.
I think that's probably true to some extent, but most Haida chiefs were very humble, and it was about how much they could give away without breaking themselves, really. So they would raise everything, and then they would just give it away, and that would just show that their wealth would never, and it'll always come back to them. You are helped, but then you give help too. My father, he had a way of doing things that, you know, people wanted to do things for him. They just stepped forward, and they did things for him. You know, they would cross oceans for him, really. Or else, you know, so it was, and I would do the same thing too. So, and you know, risking life and limb, really. I wanted to inspire others that way too, because, you know, I think I was inspired by people's work ethics and just their products, really, the things that they were doing. It impressed me, really, and it made me want to be better.
So what would you say would be the 3 most important skill sets to have or to acquire if someone, you know, in the younger generation want to step into your shoe and want to build a beautiful house like this, or to become a great carpenter like yourself?
Yeah, well, you know, I do get many different school groups come in here, and they come from all different walks of life, and I try to tell them, well, nothing's impossible. You know, you just start to make your goals, and you know, no matter how big they may seem, you know, you can get to it. You know, if you just, it might be a step by step to get there. Just got to keep moving forward on your goals, and I look for opportunity. There's, it has to be a little bit of opportunity in there, and you have to be ready to get that opportunity. One of my friends, he said, a challenge is an opportunity. If it's a challenge, it's an opportunity to bring yourself further ahead. But, a lot of people, they think about the stumbling blocks. Mm-hmm. Those stumbling blocks, you can jump over it, you could go around it. If you can't find a way to get around it or to get over it, just remove that stumbling block. The right tools could be through knowledge, education, or through hard work. We could move mountains with the work of many hands.
That's
And I wanted to prove that it could be done without government so much. I did get that small grant, but it was a very small one considering how much I put into it, which is years. Like I put in the lion's share. I did have to get another loan afterwards to, just for a few things. I had other grants to do the finishing work. And, just for things like flooring and furniture and things like that. But those were things that were needed and to make it operable. And I wanted to be a living place where people are growing and learning, practicing the culture, learning of the songs, creating dances, choreography, and of course we carve these masks, but then we bring them to life. We bring them to life through our songs, our stories, and the dances.
What would be the number one thing you would advise the younger generation not to do in order for them to become someone?
I would advise them to continue on with their education. There could be bad influences in life, drugs and alcohol, not very healthy for the body, mind, or the spirit. I advise them to just go with things that make you feel good, really, but in a good way. I can't see why anybody could be bored. There's just so much to do in the world. There's so many interesting things in life and nature. That's where I'm inspired, walking through the forest almost on a daily basis or on the beach. It's just so amazing, inspiring to hear the birds singing and just to see life transform before your eyes, through the seasons. And there's other things happening in the world too that are almost unstoppable too, like the invasion of plastics into the environment across the planet. Humanity is mostly to blame. Even on our pristine beaches, untouched areas that very few human people have gone, and in decades and hundreds of years, really, there's still places that are untouched. But you go along there and you see plastic. Mm-hmm. But I think as artists, we have the voice to expose those different things where we can make changes in our lives and in the way we treat our environment. In our history, we think about, we don't only think about the spirit above, or we don't even have a devil, but we have another being, really. We call him the noble one, standing and moving. When he gets up to move, that's when we have an earthquake.
Mm.
Yeah, 𝐂𝐴𝐤𝐬𝐿. So that's a being that every few years he'll shift his position, and then that's actually on a totem pole up by the hospital.
Oh yeah.
The bottom figure on there represents
And
𝐂𝐴𝐤𝐬𝐿.
that one too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, and yeah, that was carved in a very short period of time. It was.
Was it for the hospital or?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a gift from our old Masset Village Council to the hospital to feature the Haida culture there. And so, yes, other spirits that we have around our, like all our stories connect us with the land here. Like I could think of any different part of our land around the islands. I could think of stories that go along with that, and the different lineages that lived there. We've had spiritual experiences being in these areas, almost like somebody's been there, or somebody was there. Their spirits are there, very strong presence. So my father, he always said to me, and when we heard drumming in the middle of the night when we're carving, I was a teenager. Slowly it faded, and we could hear these waves coming in, on the North Beach. And we just walked back in and sat down and continued carving. And a while later, then we could hear it again. And he said, "Don't worry, son. That's our ancestors. They're on our side." Speak up for us, Honorable One. You speak kind words, Eagle. This is what we thank you for, Chief, Honorable One.
If you resonate with Christian's story, make sure you like and subscribe and share this video to those who might actually enjoy the story like you too. If you also like story revolving resilience and conviction, check out Dr. Sue's video, who started her PhD study at the age of 60 and finished it at the age of 66. Check it out.